Starting. Good afternoon and welcome. It's Tuesday, March 17th, and I'm calling our meeting to order at 3:30 p.m. I'm going to start with our land acknowledgement. The Municipality of Port Hope exists on the lands of the Mississauga, Anishinaabe traditional territory covered by the Williams Treaties. We honor and recognize First Peoples as rights holders and stewards of the lands and waters on which we have the privilege to live, work, and play, including the Ganaraska Forest and River. We pay respect to elders, past, present, and emerging. We commit to actions towards truth and reconciliation by recognizing the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, strengthening ties with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, especially those who make their home in Port Hope, and learning from Indigenous ways of knowing and being. We do so by recognizing the past and working towards a shared future. Does anybody have any pecuniary interest to disclose in regards to today's agenda? Seeing none. Moving on to item number 3, closed session. Today we'll be proceeding in closed session in accordance with the Municipal Act to address items pertaining to personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, Section 239(2)B, civic award nominations, and proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, Section 239(2)C, potential acquisition of land and potential lease of municipal property. Can I get a mover, a seconder to go into close? Moved by Councillor Darrell, seconded by Councillor Clare. All in favour? And that is passed. Please note that I will provide a rise and report publicly at the open council meeting later this evening. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I'm going to be calling this council meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. We're going to, and I just want to note that Councillor Attridge is joining us virtually, as you can see on the big screen there. And we're going to start with a moment of silent reflection. And I'd like to begin by taking a moment to pause in silent reflection as we honor the memory of former Councillor John Bickle, and I'm going to turn it over to Councillor Mink to say a few words.
Thank you. So I have something here to read, so just bear with me. On March 9th, our community lost a dear friend and former Councillor John Bickle. Many of you knew him as I did, as a sweet, loyal, passionate, and deeply kind man. He carried a quiet humility and remarkable depth of knowledge about our community. He was always willing to help, always steady, always present. John faced his illness with resilience and grace. Last summer, he spent time at Ed's house, and although he entered with reluctance, he quickly became profoundly grateful for the care he received. The staff in the facility meant a great deal to him. When he was in hospice, he made one last request of me. One more thing he wanted to say, one that moved him to tears, and one that I promised I would honor. As councillors, we often have the opportunity to publicly say what so many others in our community are feeling. So with a kind heart, he asked that I publicly express his deep gratitude to the hospice facility and its caregivers. So today, I honor that promise. Thank you, Ed's House. And I also honor John, thanking him for his service, his friendship, the gentle strength he brought to this community. He will be deeply missed.
Thank you, Councillor Mink, and we will now take a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Moving on to our land acknowledgement. The Municipality of Port Hope exists on the lands of the Mississauga Anishinaabe traditional territory covered by the Williams Treaties. We honor and recognize First Peoples as rights holders and stewards of the lands and waters on which we have the privilege to live, work, and play, including the Ganaraska Forest and River. We pay respect to elders past, present, and emerging. We commit to actions towards truth and reconciliation by recognizing the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, strengthening ties with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, especially those who make their home in Port Hope, and learning from Indigenous ways of knowing and being. We do so by recognizing the past and working towards a shared future. Moving on to the next item, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest around the table or online? Seeing none. Moving on to item number 3, closed session. Earlier today, Council passed a motion to proceed into closed session at 3:30 p.m. to consider business as permitted under the Municipal Act and is listed on today's agenda. This motion was passed in a public session, streamed live, and was in accordance with our closed meeting policy. In the continuing interest of transparency, I can report at this open meeting the outcomes from today's closed session. Council approved the closed session minutes from February 17, 2026. That was the last time that Council met in closed session. Council received information and considered items pertaining to an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. This is in relation to the Civic Award nominations. Council also considered items related to proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. Section 239(2)C, potential acquisition of land and potential lease of municipal property. Council received this information and provided direction to staff. And we have a few motions we need to make in open session with respect to the confidential direction that was provided to staff, and we can do so under business arising. So moving on to item number 4, which is business arising from closed session. All 3 of these motions are going to require separate mover and seconder. So motion number 1 is in regards to the Civic Awards nominations. Whereas Council at their in-camera meeting of March 17, 2026 considered confidential staff report PRC 0326 regarding 2025 Civic Award recipient recommendations, and whereas Council considered the recommendations for the 2025 Civic Award recipients by the Civic Awards Committee, commending the excellent quality of applicants and their service to our community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Council approve the recipient recommendations for the 2025 Port Hope Civic Awards as proposed by the Civic Awards Advisory Committee in confidential staff report PRC 0326, and further that Council directs staff to proceed to bring the approved nominations forward for award. Can I get a mover and seconder for this? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Clare. All in favor? And that is passed, and I'm not seeing, oh, there we go. Thank you, Councillor Todd, for your support of that as well. Moving on to the second motion, motion number 2, potential lease of municipal property. That Council receive the confidential updates and confirm the confidential direction provided to staff with respect to the potential acquisition of land and potential lease of municipal property. Can I please get a mover and seconder for that motion? Moved by Councillor Darrell, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor? Thank you, and Councillor Attridge is with us on that. Thank you very much. Moving on to motion number 3, potential acquisition of land. That Council confirm the confidential direction provided to staff with respect to confidential report CAO 0226 with respect to potential acquisition of land. Can I get a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Darrell, second by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. And moving on to announcements, updates, and recognitions. Before asking Council for their announcements or updates, I will now turn it over to the Deputy Clerk to provide an update on the upcoming municipal election.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As part of the clerk's team's commitment, we will continue to provide regular updates to members of council as well as the community regarding the upcoming 2026 election. Planning is progressing really well. Key election information has been shared with staff, and the election webpage is being updated on an ongoing basis. We're also planning several communications to help residents understand the election, and we're working with nearby municipalities to make sure our messaging is consistent. Currently, individuals are encouraged to make sure that they are on the voters list and that their information is up to date, which can be done at www.registertovoteon.ca. As well, we're planning a candidate information night for late April with support of our provincial partners at the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, with more detail of this related information session to come. And then lastly, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, so AMO, is continuing to offer free webinars for people who are thinking about running for council, so we encourage you to look at those opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does council have any updates or announcements to make? I know that we do have a couple, so not sure who wants to go. Okay. Councillor Clare, and then we have the Deputy Mayor.
This is just a quick update on an issue that I know has been of interest to a lot of residents, and that pertains to the intersection at Jocelyn and Victoria Street South, or Victoria Street North also. We've been working very closely with the county, and I want to commend Director Davidson for her ongoing efforts there. But we thought we were going to have to take it to a delegation, but we've heard today confirmation from the county that they will be including the design and construction of a signal, a traffic signal at that intersection in their 2027 budget. Of course, that still has to get approved and all of that, but really grateful to our counterparts at county and to Director Davidson for her work on this. It's been a number of years in the making, so thank you for that.
Thank you. And yes, this is a very good moment in terms of that issue. So congratulations, and Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So I just want to take a brief moment to talk about our Port Hope Panthers, and I'd like to thank our Port Hope Panthers players, coaches, trainers, volunteers, and families for another entertaining season. Your commitment, discipline, and teamwork, both on and off the ice, reflect the best of our community. Just as importantly, I want to recognize the Panthers' contributions beyond just the rink. Seeing players set up to volunteer in the community, supporting our local events, giving their time, and engaging with the residents. This helps strengthen Port Hope and sets positive examples for the young people across our municipality. Congratulations on a season, and thank you on the season, and thank you for representing Port Hope with pride on the ice and in the community. We look forward to what's coming next year. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Deputy Mayor, and turning it over to Councillor Mink.
Thank you. So I just wanted to take a minute just to bring some awareness to the other food bank in our community that is located in Bewdley. This food bank, they just had their annual general meeting, so I just wanted to speak for a minute. Many people are not aware of this food bank and what they offer, so I just wanted to share a few things that came out of their minutes. They average between 40 to 50 families per week. They serve more than 200 households. They register at least one new client per week. The clients come from 23 different local communities. So it's located in Bewdley, but they service rural Port Hope, urban Port Hope, and all the other surrounding communities. Most of the half of the volunteers are from Port Hope that run the food bank. And one of the major differences there is that they have clothes, and they have household items, and they have toys. And this is a great place. You do not need to be a registered user to use the food, to get the clothes from the food bank. Anybody can come up at any time and get clothing. So if you're in the situation where your children are growing too fast, you need winter coats, summer clothes, or even for yourself, if you're looking for something specific, come on up and check it out. If you have things to donate, you can also donate up there as well. They have a couple events every year. They have a big spring and fall yard sale, so come on up for that. And then they also have a Christmas purchasing program where children can go around and purchase gently used items for their families for less than $1. So lots going on up there, and we don't talk about it enough, so I just wanted to share that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mink. Okay, Okay, moving on to our next item, which is report from our youth counselors. I want to note that Emily is unable to join us this evening and has sent regrets, but we do have Leah Ferguson here, and she is going to present to council, so welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. Since our last meeting, I went to the Environmental Advisory meeting, hearing the most recent updates from the committee, as well as got to share my thoughts of how youth could be more involved in environmental events. I also attended the Parks and Recreation meeting, where the plans for the coming spring were shared, as well as park and recreation opportunities Port Hope could have in the up and coming spring. I participated in the Civic Award Advisory meeting just before the close of the Civic Award entry deadline, discussing the plans for the Civic Award night on April 30th and how youth counselors could be involved in the evening. I attended the special council meeting regarding the Garden Hill Conservation Area Dam to stay informed on important issues in the community. I had the opportunity to volunteer at the Flavors of Port Hope Rotary event. This was such a wonderful event, and it was wonderful to see so many people to come out to support the Rotary Club. It was amazing to volunteer with so many other community-involved youth. I also went to the Ward Boundary Listening Circle, where I got to meet other engaged citizens to talk about the ward boundary. Hearing others' thoughts was a valuable experience in a facilitated environment. This was definitely a valuable exercise. Just a couple weeks ago, Councillor Clare came to visit Port Hope High School to meet the Environment Club. This was an excellent collaborative gathering where the Environment Club members got a chance to meet with Councillor Clare and share their environmental thoughts and ambitions. During this time, the Environment Club and Councillor Clare got to engage in tulip bulb planting in the greenhouse at Port Hope High School. Also, I went to the Mayor's Youth Council meeting, hosted by Deputy Mayor Pearson, where the group discussed their ideas for the coming Youth Week, brainstorming different activities that could help celebrate and engage the youth of Port Hope. Finally, make sure to check out the March break activities that are available throughout the week, like the skating, swimming, and gym drop-ins. Also, check out the Easter egg extravaganza on March 29th. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And I'm going to ask my colleagues if they have any questions for you or any comments back to you. I would say that we're really impressed at all the things that you're attending and engaging in and communicating back. I think that when we had wanted to bring some youth counselors to our council composition, that this is exactly what we wanted to see, but you've far exceeded, both of you have far exceeded our expectations. Councillor Clare.
Yeah, I'm just going to piggyback on that to say that I think you always talk about I attended, but you do much more than attend. I've seen you in action in those meetings, and I think it's important to note that you're not just present, and same thing with with Emily as well. It's the perspective that you bring to those committees and to those spaces when you do attend that I think is the real value, although I appreciate it's valuable for you as well. But I know your voice has been really welcomed and important in some of the conversations at the EIC for sure.
Thank you.
And I'm going to just piggyback one more comment on that and say that we often say that the youth are our future, but I would say the youth are now, and you are helping to shape the community now, and we really appreciate that. So thank you very much for being here, and thank you very much for your report.
Thank you.
So moving on now to our delegations. It's now time for our delegations, and we have one delegation on the agenda tonight, and we have Ralph Torrey on behalf of Blue Dot Northumberland regarding impact assessment process on new nuclear at Wesleyville. And I welcome our speaker to the podium, and just to ensure that, the mic is on. Very good. Welcome, Ralph.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. I appreciate you making room on your agenda to hear our delegation this evening. My name is Ralph Torrey. I'm speaking on behalf of Blue Dot Northumberland, which is a group of local residents, not just from Port Hope, but from around the region and the county in particular, concerned about preserving farmland, promoting sustainable economic development, We believe in evidence-based approaches to the issues, and we are in favor of development that leaves our communities more secure and more prosperous over the long term. I had speaking notes for this evening, which I understand were circulated in advance, along with a submission that Blue Dot Northumberland made to the Federal Impact Assessment Agency concerning the proposed Wesleyville nuclear plant. So I'm not going to read through all those notes. There were about 20 paragraphs, and it would use up the 10 minutes that you have to consider alternatives to this proposal this evening. But on the town's website, this agenda item has a couple of links to both of those two documents for those who are listening in and would like to see a little bit more detail than I have time to present here in the next few minutes. We also have a website at blue.northumberland.com, which is just getting rolling, but it will be a continuing source over the weeks and months ahead of information and perhaps alternative perspectives to the proponents of this proposal for those who are interested in learning more and following this issue. I want to use a little bit of time I've got to touch on three types of issues, if you like, that concern us in our group. One has to do with the economic risks of a project this large. Secondly, the health and the safety implications that are uniquely associated with such a large nuclear development. And then finally, a word about the process, which seems to us to be moving ahead without proper analysis and deliberation for the need for this plant and the alternatives to it. First of all, on the economics, this is not just another industrial project. This would be the largest nuclear power plant in the world. It would be the largest industrial footprint in Canada, twice the size of the Oshawa GM site. It would basically cover the entire historical, the way I remember Port Hope growing up, the entire historical town from the golf club to Rose Glen Road and all the way down to TCS, if you were to lay it over the community. This is huge. It's not only huge physically, it's huge economically. Even without confirmed designs or public cost estimates, we know enough from recent experience and international benchmarks that this project will be north of $200 billion if it goes ahead as envisaged by OPG. For a community of our size, and I don't just mean Port Hope, I mean the whole county of Northumberland, a construction project of this magnitude is the economic equivalent of a hurricane. During the boom, thousands of high-wage construction workers will show up. They don't just work behind the fence. They compete with every local employer for staff and with every renter and home buyer for a place to live. Rents and housing prices go up. Small employers, farms, shops, manufacturers, care providers struggle to keep their workers or are forced to raise wages in ways that they may not be able to sustain. Most residents will not experience this first as a new paycheck from the project. They will experience it as congestion, noise, higher rents, and rising cost of living. At the same time, municipal infrastructure has to stretch and then expand. Roads and intersections, water and wastewater systems, policing, fire services, healthcare, schools, social services, and not just Port Hope. A plant of this size extends its influence for tens of kilometers in all directions. And those costs and obligations will not vanish when the project winds down. When it ends, spending and jobs tied to the construction disappear more quickly than they arrived. Some local businesses that expanded to serve the boom can be overextended. Housing built or bought at peak prices can be hard to fill or finance. Infrastructure built for the boom has to be maintained through the bust. And read Kincardine, Ontario's submission to the Impact Assessment Agency to realize the problems that a small town faces when OPG comes bearing gifts. Economically and socially, communities are often left with a hangover. Some people did very well, others mainly absorbed higher costs and disruption, and everyone is left to live with the aftermath. And because these plants, in particular these nuclear plants, take so long to build, there's an added risk. They're especially vulnerable to being overtaken by events. While we are still pouring concrete and dealing with delays and overruns, alternatives like wind, solar, storage, efficiency, and smarter grids, which are galloping forward and growing many times faster than nuclear, are getting cheaper and getting better. And Ontario has already seen large projects delayed, rescoped, or canceled when these economics change, including, ironically, at Wesleyville itself. Secondly, regarding the health and safety and security issues, nuclear power can be operated safely most of the time, but when something goes wrong, the consequences are uniquely severe and long-lived. Federal modeling of severe accidents shows significantly increased thyroid cancer risk for children living within roughly a dozen kilometers of a serious release, and the ability to reduce those risks depends on quick distribution of potassium iodide pills in the first few hours after the incident. Canadian research has found elevated cancer risks among nuclear workers. Perhaps most concerning, and I've been watching this issue for decades now, just last month, a major study led by researchers at the Harvard School of Public Health, conducted by some of the top epidemiologists on the planet, published in the journal Nature, found that U.S. counties closer to operating nuclear power reactors have a higher cancer death rate than counties farther away. The authors estimate that roughly 115,000 cancer deaths over the study period, or about 6,400 per year, were statistically associated with living near nuclear plants, with the strongest effects in older adults. They are careful to say this does not prove causation, but it is the first modern continent-wide analysis of cancer mortality around nuclear plants, and we better pay attention. It includes a concerning analysis of why earlier studies have missed this correlation, and it clearly calls for a precautionary approach and more research, not complacency. Also, a plant of the scale being discussed becomes critical infrastructure in any future conflict or cyber attack scenario, as we've seen in Ukraine, where nuclear sites have become both targets and bargaining chips. Concentrating so much nuclear capacity on a single lakeshore site makes Port Hope and Northumberland ground zero for those risks in a way that we are not today. Security requirements reflect that reality. Our existing nuclear plants already require armed on-site security, but the technology being considered for Wesleyville uses enriched uranium, which raises the threat profile to the so-called level 3 materials. It raises the level of preparedness requires. It means permanent, heavily armed response teams on site and armed convoys moving nuclear fuel and other sensitive materials through our region. That becomes a visible, permanent part of daily life here. And then there's the waste. Most of you, when you think of the nuclear waste issue, think of the long-standing search for a concept and a site for storing this waste on a long-term basis. But host communities have a very different and much more immediate concern. When the spent fuel comes out of the reactor, it's intensely radioactive and continues to generate heat. That's why it took 8 months to shut down the Fukushima plant after the accident. You can't just turn these things off because of the residual radioactivity. These spent fuel bundles have to be transferred to pool-like structures on site and kept under active cooling for years before it can be moved to dry storage casks. There are over 3,300,000 of these spent bundles right now being stored at the current CANDU sites along Lake Ontario's shore. If and when we do get a repository, of course, all of that waste, one bundle, one truckload at a time, will have to be moved through the region to wherever that repository might occur. And finally, just a final word on the process and alternatives. Under the Impact Assessment Act, the need for and the alternatives to a project like this are supposed to be part of the assessment. Yet OPG's current project description does not do that work and explicitly says alternatives are not being considered. At the same time, more than 800 submissions were filed during the short federal comment period, mostly from local residents and organizations calling for a rigorous test of whether this plant is actually needed and whether there aren't better alternatives. OPG has said it will not proceed without the express permission of the host community, that's Port Hope, and it is already providing millions of dollars in growth readiness funding, while the other communities that will also be affected get nothing. We understand what this money is for. This council has the one yes that OPG has said they must have to proceed. So for now, you have that leverage. Again, I would refer you to the Kincardine submission to the IA
Sorry,
to
that
appreciate.
that is time now.
That's time? Okay.
Yes, it is. Would you like to just complete your sentence?
Sure. I think that if you rush to signal your support, you will lose that leverage and the motivation on OPG's part to offer stronger protections or better terms or more robust support will vanish. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this presentation. And I was looking to our clerk for the timing, and so we have to be fair to everybody who comes to delegate to ensure that we stay within the time limit. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you for sharing your perspectives, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues for any questions or comments from around the horseshoe. Councillor Clare.
Thank you. Hi, Ralph. Thank you for that. I think you raised a lot of really good information about alternatives and what's happening elsewhere in the world, and important concerns that should be part of the conversation here. I just, to the point around the yes from Port Hope, I hope that you and everybody has had a chance to look at the recording of the council meeting we had where representatives from the Impact Assessment Agency came to present to council, because we had a very enlightening conversation after their presentation about the lack of stakeholder status for the municipality in the IAC process. Notably, we weren't on the flow chart in any way, and we in fact have submitted our input through the same channel as the public through the official process. Now, obviously, members of the municipality do have a seat at the table for some parts of the discussion, but I think it's really important for everybody to understand the role or lack thereof in many cases of the municipality when it comes to actual approvals or decision making with respect to the project. And that recording is available on YouTube. It was January 9th, 2026.
Thank you, Councillor Clare. Any other comments or questions from around the table? Thank you very much again for coming here and for delegating to the council.
Thank you.
We are now going to move to our recommended motion on the agenda, which is to approve this for and receive this for information. Can I get a mover and seconder on this? Deputy Mayor is moving and Councillor Mink is seconding. All in favor? Thank you. And Councillor Attridge is there. Thank you very much. That is approved unanimously. Moving on now to the public comment period. It's now time for a public comment period as per our procedural bylaw. The purpose of the public comment period is for members of the public to provide comments on items that are on today's council agenda. And if you have questions in regards to anything that is not on today's agenda, please wait until question period, which is later in the meeting, and I request that you keep your comments brief and respectful. I also remind council that no questions or comments can be directed to those providing public comments tonight. So I was going to say, if you've got a comment, please come to the podium, but we already have our first person at the podium, and we're going to have the clerk keep timing on the 2-minute limit on this.
Very good. Good evening, council and staff. My name is Dick Calling, current sheriff, Northumberland County Fair Share Food Bank. Our executive director, Megan Flindell, is earning a long-earned March break vacation, otherwise she'd be here. First off, I'd like to quickly say and wish everybody happy St. Patrick's Day, and let the luck of the Irish be with you all. While St. Patrick's Day is celebrated joyously, it often coincides with the reflections of a dark period where the potato blight destroyed the staple crop for the rural poor. Great Irish Famine was a terrible period of mass starvation caused by potato blight, leading to over 1 million deaths and massive immigration. Canadian potatoes remains a key staple food product at Fair Share. Also like to express a sincere thanks on behalf of the neighbors we serve for the generous donation of $20,000. Every bit of food helps us feed the number of households that has increased by 25% compared to February of last year. Every bit helps. I know the council this evening will be reviewing a report prepared by staff on the organization's delegation back in the fall, the subsequent motion taken last month, and discussions with our executive director a couple of weeks ago. The assignment of staff was was to explore potential space within the existing municipal facilities such that we might be able to expand our services across the municipality within the urban boundary beyond our 1 day of service today. The report did not identify a dedicated space, and I appreciate that reality, that given the obvious needs to maintain critical staff functions. I would only like to offer in support of the discussions that Fair Share does not necessarily need to rely on access to a dedicated municipal space, but open to identify a shared space. The report highlights Mill Street as one location to be studied, but maybe we can challenge all of us to consider this location in a more detailed fashion as a potential shared space. If my information is correct, I'm out of time. And so recognizing some of the attributes that we have, I will only say and request that as council deliberates this report to consider this Fair Share space as a potential shared space. And also just thank you, council, for your leadership in challenging other Northumberland municipalities to further support their local food banks that are currently beyond our reach. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment, and thank you for being here this evening. Would anybody else like to step up to make a comment?
Good evening, Sarah Sculthorpe, Ward 2. My comment is how I respect the fact that you have a time limit, but we have somebody tonight who's presenting the biggest project in the world. And we have given this gentleman a ding to be quiet. As a resident of Port Hope, as a resident of Northumberland County, we need to hear what people have to say. We need our council to be willing to listen and understand what is before us. And if we listen to what this gentleman is telling us, this is a very dangerous project and one that we all need to learn about. And to ding somebody on such a major, important issue, I think is hugely disrespectful. And I think it's not helping our municipality to come together and work on this.
Thank you for that comment. Anybody else would like to come forward to make a public comment? Thank you for all of those. We will be moving on to the next item. Oh, yes, please.
Terry Morocco, I appreciate the respect here from everybody, but is there a way to get Ralph here for another time, or a way that it is more than 10 minutes? Just ask how that could be done. Thank you.
So this is a moment for comments, not questions, but you can come back at the end of the meeting and pose that question, and we will be able to bring that forward, okay?
Thank you.
Moving on to the next item, which is correspondence. Just to note that we do not have any correspondence this evening. Moving on to item number 10, consent agenda, adoption of minutes. Items listed under the consent agenda are considered collectively as one motion. Council members may request that specific items be removed for separate discussion, deliberation, and action. The consent items are listed on the agenda. Would any member of council like to remove any of these for separate discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to ask for a mover and seconder for the minutes as listed. Moved by Councillor Darrell. Seconded by Councillor Todd. I should see because he's right on the screen in front of me. All in favor? Thank you, and that is passed unanimously. Moving on to item number 11, consent agenda advisory committee and board meetings. Would anyone like to remove any items under this consent agenda for separate discussion? Seeing none, can I get a mover and seconder to approve the minutes as listed? Moved by Councillor Clare, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Moving on to item number 12, items for consideration 12.1, report LLS 1326 re Civic Awards Advisory Committee appointment. Does council have any questions or comments regarding this report? Seeing none, the recommended motion is listed on the agenda. Can I get a mover and seconder for this? Moved by Councillor Darrell, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor? Thank you, and that is passed unanimously. Moving on to item 12.2, Report LLS 1526, Re-Equity, Diversity and Inclusivity Policy. I'm going to ask the Director of Legal and Legislative Services to introduce the report and provide an overview for council consideration.
Thank you, Worship, and good evening, everyone. Just a very high-level summary of what's in the staff report for this item. So the proposed EDI policy was brought forward to Council on February 17th, and after a good discussion, there were two motions brought forward to provide.
I'm sorry, I'm having a really hard time hearing you. We can't close the door, but perhaps folks can know that we still have council business. Thank you.
I'll talk. Oh, too close. Okay. Is that better? Yes. Okay. So the EDI policy had come to council originally on February 17th, and after a good discussion, council had provided two motions with additional direction to staff to make some changes to the proposed policy. And that's what's being brought forward tonight is the revised policy in accordance with the direction provided by council. So one of the motions had requested that staff revise section 4.2, which was to require staff to use those 10 guiding questions that are in the EDI framework and strategy. That will be used as staff draft staff reports for any items that come forward to council. The second motion had some direction to amend wording to change from which was more permissive language may and should to be more mandatory obligations for staff using the word shall. So that's changed through several sections of the policy. And then finally, we have added a new section which is a process by which someone can submit a concern about bias, barriers, or systemic discrimination in municipal policies or programs, which would be reviewed by staff and responded to, and corrective action taken if necessary.
Thank you very much for that overview, and I'm going to turn it over to colleagues for any further questions or comments. And I see Councillor Todd has his hand up. Please go ahead, Councillor Todd.
Thanks very much. Can you hear me all right? All right. Well, thank you very much. And I appreciate all the work that staff has put into this. And also I want to thank council for your patience and tenacity as we've gone through this. I've said this before. I honestly think this is one of the most important policies that's created by the municipality. And I'm very pleased with where we're landing on this. For the public, when we think of government in its most simplest terms, as council, we create systems and staff enforce those systems. And of course, as public, we exist within those systems. And if we were to think of these systems as rules in a game, council's role is really to create rules that help as many people as possible win the game. What this policy does is it's a major step forward in helping more people in our community win, especially people for whom historically the rules don't necessarily favor them. So I hope everyone who's been involved in creating Port Hope's EDI policy and anti-oppression framework takes pride in this moment, and that future councils, staff, and committees always respect and uphold the importance that was put into it. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Todd, for those very thoughtful comments and sentiments which many of us around this table share. Councillor Clare.
Yeah, I just also wanted to say thank you for the update and with respect to using those 10 questions. And I can say from experience now, because our clerk's department did push back on the Environmental Advisory Committee, sent our new terms of reference back to us to go through that process. So we've started doing that. And I think we did, when we drafted the original TORs, we did have a brief discussion about inclusivity, and we thought we'd done a pretty good job. But being forced to go through those 10 questions, I actually surprised myself. I was like, oh, right, there were some things that we hadn't considered. So I think the steps, even if you're someone who considers yourself to be, thinking along those lines, it's proven helpful already. So thank you for that nudge from Debbie.
Yeah, and whoever said checklists are not a good idea. They're sometimes not enough, but often they're a good minimum requirement, right? Okay, so the recommended motion is listed on the agenda. Can I get a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Todd, second by Councillor Clare. All in favor? Thank you, and that is passed unanimously. And thank you to staff for all the changes. Moving on to item 12.3, LLS 1626, report re-parking bylaw. Does council have any questions or comments regarding this report? Seeing none, the recommended motion is listed on the agenda. Can I get a mover and seconder on this? You were ready, weren't you? The Deputy Mayor is going to move this, and Councillor Mink is going to second. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. And finally, we have 12.4, Report PRC 0426, Facilities Review, Fair Share Food Bank. I'm going to ask Council if they have any questions or comments, but I did want to make a comment just to perhaps start the conversation, and that is that we know what the content is of this report, but I do know that this council and this municipality continue to be committed to exploring further options for the food bank, and so it's very much still on our agenda, regardless of some of the comments and observations made in this report. We continue to work on this file very diligently. Any further comments from around the table? Okay, seeing now the recommended motion is to receive this report for information. Can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Clare, seconded by Councillor Darrell. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Moving on to item number 13, consent agenda, committee reports and recommendations. As approved by council, we now have a consent agenda for committee reports and recommendations. Council has the ability to pull an item under the consent agenda if they want to consider it separately. Any item removed will be addressed following the consent agenda motion. So I'm going to start by asking, would anybody like to remove any of the items for discussion? I'd like to note that this is a first, a historic first, and I think it does create a lot of efficiencies for our meeting without at all changing the ability for any of us to pull and discuss any of the items. So I think it's a move in the right direction. So if we have nobody pulling anything, I'm going to ask for a mover and seconder for approving the committee recommendations as listed. Councillor Darrell will move that. The Deputy Mayor will second. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. We have no notice of motions this evening. Moving on to item number 15, which is tracking report on outstanding motions. 15.1, report LLS 1426, council direction list. Quarterly update, March 2026. And I think this is also a very exciting new development for the municipality and for council. So I'm going to ask our deputy clerk to introduce the report and provide an overview for council consideration.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Report LLS 1426 is presented solely for information purposes and is the first quarterly update following Council's February 17th direction to implement a Council direction list to track outstanding Council directives or report backs that require additional information or action. To support this direction, the Legislative Services team has developed the Council direction list, which will be maintained in collaboration with our senior leadership team after every council meeting. The current list includes 57 action items. However, I'm happy to announce that 34 are deemed complete, 20 are in progress, and 3 are paused pending completion of other initiatives. The next update is scheduled for June 2026, and with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. I just wonder if you can clarify that this tracker only tracks council motions and directions. It does not track all the things that we receive for information. Can you just speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. Yes, that is correct. The tracker is solely for initiatives that were directed to staff to follow up with, so that could be through a notice of motion or different actions that have come out of other motions, for example, deferred to a future date pending something else. Any item received for information is not captured on this list, no. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other comments or questions around the table around this? Councillor Todd?
Yeah, I think the one thing that I would just draw everyone's attention to from a public point of view is what's really important about this, and especially at this time of year as we're moving towards an election, is this is going to help councils maintain continuity as people switch and chairs change, so that we can keep continuity of what was brought up in previous councils. It's oftentimes things get lost, so this will be a really valuable tool for the public to be able to look at and just make sure that we are keeping that moving forward.
Thank you for that, Councillor Todd. Institutional memory is critical. The recommended motion is to receive this for information, so can I get a mover and seconder on this? Moved by Councillor Clare, seconded by Councillor Todd. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Moving on to item number 16, bylaws consent agenda. Does anyone want to pull a bylaw for further discussion this evening? Seeing none, can I get a mover and seconder for the bylaws? See, now I'm looking at Councillor Todd will move it and Councillor Clare will second. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. We're going to just take a short break now to allow staff to leave before we have our final question period this evening. Okay, we're going to be moving on to question period. So this is your opportunity to ask brief, direct questions to council members about matters of municipal business. Please remember, this is not a time to ask questions of staff. We can pass on operational questions to staff after the meeting, or you can email those operational questions to clerk@porthope.ca. So please keep your questions concise. Simply state your question clearly and directly. So anybody who's got a question, I invite you now to come up to the podium.
Hi, Ed White, Mill Street.
Ed, do you want to just get a little closer to the mic so we can all hear you there? Thanks.
Great. Okay, so am I to take it that item 16 on the agenda, the bylaws consent agenda, that the three things that are listed there, a rate increase for wastewater consumption, the appointment of a third-party contractor for the purpose of enforcing parking regulations, and that there's now going to be no parking on the north side of Percival Street. Those three bylaws have now officially been passed as such?
That's correct, Ed. We had a fulsome discussion on these items, and now they are passed. Not today, in our previous committee of the whole meeting.
Okay, and if allowed, one more question, please. The tracking system for the memorandums and whatnot is not for information received from the public. This is for council questions. What happens to and how is it used? When you get someone who comes up with for information, and you approve something that they say will take it for information. What happens to that? How does it get used?
It gets filed with, well, first of all, let me just clarify, as did the deputy clerk, that the tracking system is only for business that is advanced by council through resolution, or as the deputy clerk had explained, through other means, so that we know what decisions have been made by council and how they have been implemented throughout the municipality of Port Hope. So it does not include items that we receive for information. So just really making that distinction absolutely clear.
Okay, yeah, no, I got that, but
Okay.
I guess my basic question is, how, when somebody comes up and you say, okay, we're going to receive this for information, what happens to that? Where does that go, and how is it used in the future, or is it used in the future?
It is filed in the municipality, okay, so it sits within the municipality, and if somebody comes forward and asks a question of us, that is passed on, as we've said before, to the appropriate staff, and the staff gets back to the person who is asking the question.
So there's like some kind of archive of all the things that people have said, and you can call it up, or?
I know that we're not supposed to direct things to staff, but I am going to just let the deputy clerk.
I'm not looking over there.
No, but she's got her finger on the button, so I'm just going to let her really briefly respond.
Well, they
to
can
you.
get back to me if that's no problem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to Mr. White. So anything that happens at a public meeting, such as this, they are part of our agenda package, which is archived with our records. That's under legislation. We're required to keep those, as well as any action from these meetings are documented in our minutes that are also archived.
Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Clare.
I think too, so there's the official, how the municipality retains that information, but it's also, as individuals who hear that information, if we were ready to act on that information, we often would bring forward, and you've seen us do it, I know you've seen us do it, where we bring forward an alternative motion. So rather than receiving for information, we choose to action that information in some way by referring it to staff or passing a different resolution. If we haven't done that, it's not necessarily to say that we're not interested or aren't going to think about it at all. We're just not ready at that moment. And sometimes the things that we hear in delegations, it sticks with us, and we go and we do more research, or we consult with more people. We talk about it with staff. We sort of explore it on our own, and it might resurface. And that has happened in this term of council as well, where a nugget from something that we've heard in a delegation was new information, and later on it's sort of come back up in discussion and led to something down the road. So there's no single answer, I guess, to your question, but we hear it, and we hear the information, and what happens with that really depends on.
But it is written down somewhere.
But the municipality has official records that keep it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
The rest of us keep it in our head.
as I said, it's part of the archives, and I think what Councillor Clare was also saying is we can pull it at any point if we should require for any future consideration or business, in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Anyone else have any questions that they would like to ask this evening? Okay. that concludes our question period for this evening, and I'll be moving on now to our confirmatory bylaw. It's now time for the confirmatory bylaw. This bylaw confirms the proceedings that took place this evening and provides for formal adoption. Can I have a mover and seconder for this item? Councillor Clare will move that. Councillor Mink is seconding. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. And I am happy to announce that we are adjourning our meeting at 7:29 p.m. Thank you.